humbled by it, and I think I'm a very fortunate guy. And particularly, getting to be Big Bird was the second greatest thing that ever happened to me.
You are a very lucky man, but you know what they say, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah, that's true. But I am so satisfied with the film, but also with my life, in that I kind of thought when I was a kid, I didn't have a great time in school all the time. I had some great times. There were a lot of good people and wonderful teachers. But to plan to do things what I'm doing, I kind of planned it as a kid. I didn't know how it would unfold. And meeting Jim Henson, of course, was one of the great moments, because I could not have done it by myself. I always felt I was going to attach myself to somebody that would be what I needed to go where I wanted to go. I thought it was only Walt Disney. I was actually in the same room with him once. And another guy I liked so much was Andrew Wyeth, who I spent the afternoon with him once. And because I always wanted to be a painter, not that good as a painter. And but I think I wanted to be a puppeteer more than anything. I was just so fascinated that you could put something on your hand and tell a story with it. Mm-hmm. That's what I was impressed with when I was 5 when I first saw it. And I think that it was what I was supposed to do.
Do you think that when you were a child, there was some unhappiness in your childhood?
Yes, but in a way I may have, I did have a lot of wonderful time as a child. My mom was one of the greatest people. Mm-hmm. And she built me 12 different puppet shows, and I gave birthday party shows all around Boston, and put myself through art school that way, because my father didn't think I should go to art school. I was going to start with that. And I didn't.
But by being...
You can see it happen.
But was Big Bird a way for you to sort of continue that childhood and create a childhood that maybe you felt could have been better, or a childhood the way you would have wanted to have it?
I think other than my slight fear of my dad, although he was a good guy a lot of times, I just never knew when it was going to boom, something would fall bad on me. But he never really, it was just that one time, but that stuck with me, obviously. And I really had a good childhood, except that I got bullied a lot. And so when I did that script, they showed a little of Big Bird getting bullied. That was the subject 2 years ago of the year, really, with the kids' shows. Because bullying will hardly always happen. And it was kind of spoiled a lot of days, because I wasn't able to, if you threw a ball at me, I'd duck or break a finger as it hit my hand. I couldn't catch it, anything. So I was always playing left field when I was forced to play baseball. And I didn't learn to be a good team player, because I was never on any team until I could join the Muppets. And
when you think of
Frank explained what that part was.
When you think of cuddly creatures that a kid could love, I have to say I don't think Bird is the first thing that comes to mind. How did a Big Bird actually become the Big Bird?
Well, Jim's first concept, when he saw me doing my show, he'd gone to that puppet festival. The Puppeteers of America had a festival every year in different places around the country, and now they do it biannually. And he was scouted there to have somebody play Big Bird and Oscar. He offered it to Frank Oz, who was an incredible puppeteer, and a good friend to say nice things like he did in this film. And he was offered the chance to play Big Bird, but he had played Little Choi Dragon, which was a commercial. You'd have to be old enough to remember. It was a canned Chinese food, chop suey, which is not even Chinese food. It's really invented in America. But anyway, he said, "Oh, I have a Little Choi Dragon," and he would come in and he'd sweep his tail. He'd whip cabinets right out of the set. I don't know how they breakaway cabinets. Or another time, Frank had to be in it, and they actually put a real flamethrower in his hand. And he opened his mouth. He says, "You want it hot?" and big flames would come in. It completely burned up the set. I don't know how they got away. They got permission to do that. It was awesome. And Frank wasn't too happy in there. And Frank had joined him, tried to join him when he was only 14. And when Jim said, "You go home, finish high school, come back and join me." And he came. He was immediately brought in. And Frank is just incredible. But he loved Jim so much it took the heart out of it for him. So he directs movies now. And he still comes back every year and does a little puppetry.
Yeah. If Caroll didn't tap into Big Bird, well, actually someone said in the film that had Caroll not tapped into Big Bird, that he would have been exactly the same kind of person. Do you think that? What do you think?
Put this up. I really think he would be the same person, because I think that Big Bird tapped into him almost, that's his soul, so he just puts it out there.
If I hadn't had that job, I would have met you. She worked on Sesame Street.
We love Big Bird.
And I could never be who I am now without Deb making me a better man.
Good answer.
I want to talk a little bit about the film, Chad and Dave. You guys have worked together before. Your last feature was, I think it's Brown Stones and Red Dirt. Was that it?
Yeah, that's correct. Chad and our executive producer Clay, who's out there, and I got back together in I don't know, 2007 or something on a film, small film about kids in Brooklyn, New York that had pen pals in Sierra Leone that were war orphans. And we made that film, and we thought, hey, this is really fun. We should do it again. And I had interned at Sesame Street. And we were talking to one of our friends who also is in the audience tonight, who happens to be related to Caroll and Deb, about the internship, and she said, "Oh, did you know, I'm sort of related to Caroll." And at that time, I didn't know that Caroll had been Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch. I didn't know he was still doing it. And so Chad and I started talking about it, and we told Clay, and we're like, "Hey, we should make this a movie," thinking there's no way these two would ever say yes. And then we went to pitch them, and they said yes.
Gladly.
It just felt right.
It was actually pretty surreal because, we're like, "Oh, Caroll, this would be great. Let's make this movie together." And all of a sudden, I turn around and there's Oscar, staring at me, and I'm like, "Oh my God, what's happening?" And Carol's still talking to Dave about something, and Oscar's there blinking and checking me out, what is going on? It's pretty good.
The archival in this film was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Did you have an amazing visual researcher? Did you get a good rate? I mean, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was Deb.
Yeah, Deb is unbelievable. In that very first meeting, Deb said to us, "Hey guys, if we decide to do this, just so you know, I've sort of videotaped everything we've ever done. Would you like to see it?" Like, yeah, sure. So the first box she drops off for us had the behind the scenes of the Muppet Family Christmas, which was I don't know if you guys know that special, but it basically was that's a good one. Every Muppet known to man is
They made it in Toronto.
And so it's Caroll, Jim, and Frank, and Jerry, and it's just awesome. And so that was the first box of footage she gave us, and then it's they would do these things that they would set the camera up, the two of them would be out in the middle of nowhere, they'd set the camera up on a tripod, and then they'd walk away holding hands, and then give us a perfect cut.
How we knew.
It was literally thousands of hours of material. Clay and I went up one time with two cars and opened their closet and just pulled out 8mm film, thousands of photos. It was unbelievable.
Did you guys forget anything you actually shot? Was there something that they dug up and decided to use?
I was hoping there was nothing that I didn't want them to say. No, it didn't happen.
And the animation in the film, where did that come from? Was that Caroll, or was it?
So actually, after when Dave and I met, we met at an animation studio, Blue Sky Studios. We worked there for a little while. We met some amazing people, and one of them was Chris Zamesco, and he's an animator, and he did all of that. And it was always trying to be rooted back in the look and feel of animation from Sesame Street. Where words would pop up above people's heads, their numbers, and things like that. So I think he did an amazing job.
And it was such a cool process because Caroll would do these conceptual drawings. So, especially of your first puppet show, we had no idea what that looked like. Caroll used to have this footage but his car burnt up, and that whole film he made burnt up in that fire. And so we had no record of it. It's like one of the few things that he's had in his life.
I did that one show, it was basically a disaster, they threw that light on, I couldn't see the animation, I'm at a blank angle, and, but it did the job, and then a week later the car caught on fire and it burned to the ground, and I didn't think of taking the film out of there, it was a year's work.
So yeah, so we had the animators based everything off of Caroll's sketches, which was awesome.
What I found very interesting in terms of how you developed the Big Bird character into what he became is that you realized that in order for Big Bird to work, that Big Bird had to be a child. And I'm wondering, what was the click in your mind that made you realize that that's what Big Bird had to be?
Well, they were right at first. They didn't. Big Bird was just introduced, and they didn't know what he was. They'd never seen him, and he didn't exist 3 days before that. And so I was playing him for a while. I don't know how many weeks or months it was, maybe 2 months. But the writers caught on who he might be, and they wrote a scene where Big Bird saw some children going into a place, and he looked in them, and it was a child care place, and they were having fun with little toy scissors and making things. And he wanted to join them too. And I said, you know, it doesn't make sense because he's a big, 8-foot goofy guy who wants to just go and play with his kids if he's not a kid himself. I don't know if you want an 8-foot goofy guy. And so, because Jim had described it, I said, what's he like? What should I play him like? And he said, well, I've always wanted to make a silly, goofy bird. So I guess he's goofy, maybe he talks like Mortimer Snurd. So he at first said, oh, here I am, Big Bird. And it sounded actually a little bit later on, I heard his voice again, he was a purple dinosaur. And I worked with the purple dinosaur, he was a nice guy. But anyway, I voiced that aloud. Of course, the producers were sitting in the control room with John Stone and doing great work. And I said, I think I should play him like a child from now on, but I'll take a week or two to lighten him up. So I'm talking like this. I'll talk a little higher and higher and higher. So funny. Hi, I'm Big Bird. That's where it came from.
And on the other end of the scale, you brought someone to join us this evening.
Oh, I have, yes. That's a beautiful one. Because we will cry during the movie. Something green in here.
This is a real treat.
Can you believe a TV star rides in the overhead bin? I know there's a head in there somewhere. Leave me alone. There's no way for me to end up making my entrance.
Love you, Oscar.
I hate you. Never thank a Grouch.
Well, I thank you for coming here on.
I told you, never thank a Grouch.
Oscar, what was it like sharing the street with Big Bird?
Well, he's a big turkey. Hey, I don't want to hear that. Where is it? Right here. I am Big Bird. Very clever, very clever.
Do you travel all the time, Oscar?
A lot, because I get to go a lot more places than the bird, because I couldn't go ahead bit. The bird requires about $1,000 just to get on the plane. And a helper who has to be paid, and trucking and all that stuff. Lucky me. I get to go, but I never see anything while traveling. It's a very dark bag. I can't even breathe in there.
You know, Oscar is like the anti-hero to Big Bird in a way. I'm just sort of wondering, they're kind of like the yin and yang, and would there have been a different kind of Big Bird or a different kind of Oscar if they didn't have each other?
I guess they were pretty independent, really.
Mm.
They do run into, once in a while they're seen together. That's when we use another puppeteer, but one of the ones I'm not doing.
Mm-hmm.
It could be either one, but the one that I have most words with in that script, I will be doing. to Ernie stuff. He did that green screen stuff. Said it almost killed him. Green screen is great.